Okay, so I have started the recording,
Sure.
and feel free to mute your microphone and only unmute your microphone when you have question. The reason I request this because two things. Sometimes there is background noise from your side, um, and a small sound from your side switches the screen to you. And what happens when my students are watching the recording? they they don't see my desktop. They see a blank screen, or let's say if you have put your photo, then your photo is displayed on the screen instead. So that's the reason I request my students to mute the microphone and unmute when you have a question. So feel free to do that. You can also send me on the chat, but problem is when you send me information on the chat, um, sometimes I'm too engrossed and I'm not looking at it. So you can still do that, but it's better to unmute and ask me the questions. Okay. All right. Let me start the class now. So today we are going to cover um, defects. So we did these three. Today the topic is fault, error, defect, failure, and bug. Oh, what's the difference between all these things? Okay. Now, when you will go for work, they will treat everything the same. It defect, bug, error, failures for them means like, hey, the product is not working as expected. Okay, that's just same thing. But keep in mind when you go for certification, all these are treated little differently. Yes, like little subtle or nuances to these that make the definition different. Okay, so let's start with okay, so this is just like a review of what is quality, software quality assurance. Oh, actually, let me review this. So last time when I did these three, I was using my own explanation and whatnot, but now these are by book, like the definitions. So what is quality? Remember I said meeting customer requirements is from people who are building the product and people who are going to use the product. Will they, for them the definition of quality is fit for use. Okay. Then there's the quality assurance by IEEE standards. So this is how they have defined. There are two ways they have defined. Okay. I go for this one because it's easy to you know remember. Basically, set of activities designed to evaluate the process by which products are developed or manufactured. Okay, so remember how I was trying to explain you guys, like, hey, QA is about process evaluation and defects are about product evaluation, right? uh, and if somebody may say, okay, what process are you talking about? It's basically the process by which we make product. Okay, by which we develop or manufacture a product. Okay, not just actually product. Your product could be okay, so yeah, when you hear the word product, don't think it's just the physical product. It could be the something that is non uh, how to say non-tangible. That could be the services also. QA also applies on the customer service, things like that. Okay, because when you're providing service, that's a product for some company, right? So QA applies there also to make sure that they are providing correct services to their customer. Okay, so just bear that in mind. That don't think product as always it's going to be ice cream, or it's going to be a cell phone, or it's going to be some kind of like clothing. It can also be services. Your product is services. Okay. Um, Now this is what is software testing. This is the definition of software testing, again by IEEE standards. IEEE stands for Institute of Electrical Electronics Engineers. Okay. Now, if you see what they're talking about here is product evaluation, which you can see right here. It says making an evaluation. So, and you can see the process of operating a system or component in a specified condition, observing, recording the results, and making an evaluation of some aspect. So basically, this whole thing I said like, hey, that's product and you're evaluating it, right? Easy to remember. But let's say if you want like the book definition, so here are those two. Now, keep in mind, what are we testing? Are we testing some kind of medicine? Are we testing food? Are we testing fabric? No, we are testing software, right? So if you want to go specific on like what is software testing, then here's the definition for software testing. So basically same, pretty much analyzing software item to detect the difference between existing and required conditions, which is basically component to specified conditions, observing or recording results, right? Making evaluation of some aspects of the component. So here you can see the difference between existing and required condition. And then this is an example to explain, right? But this right here is the 1.5 line. Okay, so these are definitions. Now this is some of the differences between quality assurance and testing. Defect prevention, defect detection. Software quality assurance is about entire software development process. Testing is part of that process. Like developer is a part of the process and their job is to build the product. Testers is also part of the process where they test the product. Quality assurance is proactive, testing is reactive. QA is about process evaluation, testing is about product evaluation. So different ways of explanation I did so you can understand the difference between the two. Okay. So now we are dealing with defects, error, fault, bug, failure. So what are the difference between these? So this is what I was talking about, that in industry, when you will start to work, they see no difference between these definitions. They see this as the same thing. The chances are you may be thinking similar ways. Now, let's look at what you do as a tester. Okay. Let me take analogy of a restaurant. Okay. So when you enter a restaurant, what happens? Can someone walk me? A little nicer restaurant. I'm not talking about the fast food restaurant. I'm talking about where you can, go for like a reasonable dinner or something like that. What happens when you enter a restaurant? Anyone? You will have to unmute your microphone.
Yes. Well, first thing is we are greeted
By
as soon as we enter.
very good. Do you know who greets you? Like, what is that position called? The person greeting you.
Sorry, I don't exactly know what the title would be.
It could be a waiter or waitress, possible.
Yes.
If it's not so fancy restaurant, right?
Yes.
Or it could be maybe like the greeter or whatever. Okay. So let's say you're in a very fancy restaurant where they have a separate person to greet you, right? Then what happens? This person transitions you to whom?
And then you're asked if you have a reservation, and then you're taken to your table.
Mm-hmm. And then what happens?
And then they take the order, right? When
Who
we are
takes
seated,
the
after
order?
we are seated,
Who takes the order?
the waiter or waitress.
Very good. So remember this position. Okay. And what they do with the order?
And then they make a note of it, or
yeah. So that's the order. And what do they do with that piece of paper?
Sorry, they go ahead and communicate to the kitchen and ask them to.
Very good. So, and how do they communicate? Verbally, or they take that paper?
They take the paper and go and
Very good. Okay.
Take it inside.
So if you see that paper is your requirements, if you're the customer, it is a customer requirement, correct? This
Yeah.
is what customer requires, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So waiter are the people who are writing the requirements, right? Customer requirements, and they are taking it to the kitchen, correct? Now, once it goes into the kitchen, you have the head chef, right? Or the chef, right? Under them, the chef will have cooks, correct? And then the head chef will be like the architect for that requirement to say like, okay, you do this, you do the salad, you do the uh, dessert part or whatnot, correct? So that gets distributed among the cooks. Okay. Let me know if you disagree with what I'm telling you. Okay.
Sure.
And then what happens once the food is prepared? Let's say if it's a nice restaurant, they may have a person in the end who will take all these pieces from different cooks, put it on a tray, right? Pick up that customer requirements written by the waiter or waitress, and now they will compare. They will go through that and they will make sure it is on that tray or not. And once they see, yeah, everything is there according to what customer asks, they put that tray on the, maybe some kind of hole or, whatnot, and they'll ring the bell to tell the waiter or waitress it's ready for them to serve. Good so far?
Mhm. Yes.
And now what the waiter waitress will do, they will take that tray full of all those dishes, they'll take to the customer, they will serve it. Now, once they put everything on the table, what happens now? Customer will do, they will take a glance, right, to make sure this is what they ordered, right? And thumbs up, and project is over. Correct? Is that the flow?
Yes.
Okay. So think like IT is pretty much similar thing. An IT department that builds the software is similar. The person taking the order from the customer is called product owner, okay? Or they are also called business analyst. If you hear the word business analyst, product owner, pretty much same thing. And I'll tell you why these are, if they are same thing, why the names are different. And I'll tell you later on. But for now, assume they are the same. The In the kitchen, when this order goes, right? So the order is called requirements document. Once the order is taken and written and documented, that documentation is called requirements. Okay. Now, when the requirements goes into the kitchen, the head chef in IT is technical architect. Okay. The technical architect is like the head chef of a restaurant, or the head chef of a restaurant is actually equal to the technical architect in an IT group or IT team. Okay. The developers are the cooks. They do the actual work of sitting down and writing the code for each piece of project that they're assigned. And testers are the people in the end who are uh, making sure they take that requirement and they're comparing it with what is on the tray. And if it's matching, they're passing it. And if it's not matching, they will tell the cook like, hey, this is still missing. Can someone work on this? Or hey, this is not the what customer ordered. Okay. So this is what that tester is doing. They're taking that order from the business analyst or product owner, and now they're comparing with what was prepared for the customer, and they're making sure it is correct. And when it's passed, they give it to product owner or business analyst to deliver it to the customer. Does that make sense now? Like the analogy, I'm using a restaurant analogy into a IT department.
Yes. Would it be possible for you to repeat this again?
Repeat the whole process again.
Not the whole process,
Okay.
just from where we started, product owner, business analyst.
Sure. So business analysts and product owner are like the waiter or waitresses in the restaurant.
Yeah.
When they take the order, okay, and they document it, and why it is documented, right? Because we don't want any mistake. We don't want any
Yes.
mistake in the communication line. And actually, a good uh, waiter or waitress, what they will do, they will repeat once they write the order. They will repeat back to the customer to get their
Yes.
approval, right? And once the customer says, "Yeah, this is what, yeah, exactly what I need," so basically they got the customer approval. Now they go in the kitchen, which is like the IT department, and then they give the list to the head chef. Head chef takes it and breaks down the project, like who's going to do what part of the project, assigns it to developers, which is the cooks, right?
Yeah.
And the cooks are working on that individual piece they got on it. And once they see it's built, they transfer it to the testing team. Testing team will take that and compare with what customer ordered, okay, which is the requirements document. They'll take the requirements document and they will look at the product and they'll compare, is it matching or not? Basically making sure this is what customer order. Do I see that dish? Right? Now think like they go a little bit more deeper by tasting the food also to make sure it's tasting correct also. It's done nicely. They may take the temperature to make sure the food is at the right temperature. The presentation is nice and whatnot, right? Basically, for presentation, they may have the menu with photos of all the dishes and they're comparing like, yeah, it's looking like this also or not, right? So think like they go in that detail. And once they see everything is passing, then they will deliver to the product owner. And the product owner, which is waiter or waitress, they take the food and then they deliver to the customer. Sounds good?
Yes. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so question for let me see, Samina and Sangeeta. Have you both done user acceptance testing?
User acceptance testing. No.
How about you, Sangeeta?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes, as far as I remember, yes.
Now you must be thinking like, what's wrong with Hussein? What he had for breakfast? Because we told them we don't know testing. We have never done testing. Why he's asking us this, right? Okay, my second question is, have you both done data migration testing?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Isn't data migration testing little fancy word?
That's a
Like
very
very
fancy word.
technical sounding, right? That's why it was more easy for you to say, no, I have not done it immediately, right? So let's talk about user acceptance testing.
Okay.
Uh, have you purchased a phone recently? Recently could be a year also.
Yes.
Yes.
So you just picked up the phone blindly and paid for it? Or you kind of like tried to play with the whatever sample was outside there?
Okay, now I see where you're going. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When you buy a car, do you just buy blindly or you do a test drive or, at
You
least you
do a,
see the interior thing, right?
you do a
Same thing
test
with,
drive.
yeah. So you are basically doing testing. You have been doing testing. And the type of testing you were doing all this time was user acceptance testing. You were seeing that whether I'll accept this product or I'll reject this product.
Okay.
Correct? So you have done that testing. Okay. How you were doing that testing? You have a set of requirements and you're comparing that with the product that was on the display. And your requirements could be budget also, not just look and feel. Many times you don't buy something because it could be budget also, right? What about now? Let's go to data migration testing. Sangeeta, have you done data migration testing?
No.
All right. Can you tell me what does migration means?
Mm,
Migration means going from one place to another.
Very good.
Migrating.
So when you say data migration, what does that mean?
Transferring the data from one place to another.
Uh, Good. So that's data migration. What about data migration testing?
the test from tester to user.
No, data migration testing.
Testing the data before migrating it.
Maybe, okay, so what's the benefit of testing before migrating the data versus after migrating the data?
Well, it depends, right? Who is the end user? Are we transferring it to the end user, who is our customer? So
Yeah.
before sending the data, transferring the data to the customer, we got to test it first if it's accurate.
Okay, before. But what about after? Should you test after or no?
After, not
Okay,
so
so let me
sure.
put this example.
Yeah.
When you buy a new phone, did someone transfer the data for you from old phone to the new phone? Like your address and phone numbers for your friends.
Yes. Yes.
So should you do tests before or after migration?
After.
Very good. And why you did that?
Make
To
sure.
check it. Go ahead, Sangeeta, please.
Yeah, make sure everything works.
Yeah. So can you
Perfectly.
describe me what kind of testing you did for data migration? So let's say, you came to my store, you bought the phone, and you said, okay, can you migrate the data from the old to new phone? I'm like, yeah, let me do that right now. Give me 5-10 minutes, please have a seat, blah, blah. I come back and I give you both the phones back to you. So what are you going to test now in the new phone?
Check everything transferred to this phone.
Can you be a little bit more specific? You're correct, but I'm trying to see like what will be that check that everything got transferred.
The data will everything change to
Okay, no, so
this.
chances are you will see I had 102 addresses, right? Of
Mhm.
102 people in the old phone. Let me see, do I have the 102 people in the new phone,
Yes.
right? You will compare maybe one or two randomly, some friends before and after. Like you look at the old phone and compare in the new phone. Is it matching or not, right? You'll make sure first name is in the first name. It didn't get switched with the last name, right? Fax number, mobile number didn't get switched. It is there, right? Work phone number didn't get switched by home phone number, right? Nothing got corrupted, right? So essentially, you guys were doing data migration testing also, but you were not putting some nice label to it. Okay, you will see this happening in testing a lot, where you will see all these things, we give it as fancy labels, but if you look at it, there is nothing, there's no rocket science behind it. This is something like common sense, you will realize. And also you will realize one more thing, that the answer for certain terminology is basically in the terminology. That's why, see, when it came to explaining you what is quality assurance, I went word by word to tell you, look, actually, these words are telling you the definition of what this word is for. And that's why I went for user acceptance testing, break it down. Data migration testing, break it down. Basically, it's telling you, migrate the data, and then you do the testing. Make sure that migration was successful, right? And next thing you realize, like, oh my God, I've been doing this. I've done it, right? So we learned two terminologies today: data migration testing and user acceptance testing. Okay. We also learned the different titles that are involved in an IT department to build a product, right? Or to deliver the product. So if you see, the UAT in the restaurant happens when the business analyst or product owner, when they put all the dishes on the table and customer takes a glance, right? Looks at it and says, wow, yeah, this is what I ordered. But let's say customer ordered, like some vegetarian burger, and you put a steak on their table. What will happen? UAT will fail. Customer will say, hey, I'm a vegetarian. I never ordered steak. Correct? So what happened? People will look at the requirement document, like, what went wrong? What does the requirement says? And if the requirement says it was a veggie burger and somebody built a steak for the customer, there is something totally wrong in the process, right? Maybe, and you'll see what happens. Maybe some order got swapped, right? Or people were not reading carefully. They thought, everyone is coming here for steak. Let's make steak and give it to this person without even looking properly, right? So that is separate. We'll have a discussion on it. What could be the reasons of failure in a process? Okay. But if you see, what I'm trying to come now to the point is, if customer ordered A, you as an IT group is supposed to deliver customer A. You cannot give them A plus or A minus also. Okay. You give them A minus, it's a failure. It's a defect. It's a defective product. If you gave them A plus, meaning more than what customer, that is also a failure. Okay. You should deliver A if customer is asking A. If they're asking B, then you give them B. You give them B plus or B minus, yeah, it's not going to work. That's a failure. So think like, if I come to McDonald's and I say, hey, I need a cheeseburger with large fries and small Coke. And by mistake, you gave me cheeseburger, large fries, and large Coke instead of small Coke. You may think like, oh, so, fine, it's a little bit extra we give to the customer. Customer will be happy. We are not charging them extra. But that's a defect actually. Because why? By definition, we already told that if we are producing the product, we are basically trying to meet customer requirements. Nowhere it says we should exceed customer requirement, right? The definition is for producer is, hey, we are meeting customer requirement. So if you're exceeding customer requirement, it's a defect from producer's perspective, because eventually you will lose business because you don't have money now, because you've been giving away extra to the customer to exceed expectation. But if you give something less, now the customer will reject it, saying like, hey, I ordered this and you're giving me less. Or let's say instead of small Coke, you gave them small Sprite, and they'll be like, I never ordered Coke. I ordered Coke. I never ordered Sprite. Right? So you cannot give them. So if you see, defects are three types. Or it could be you gave them small Coke, right? So you gave them cheeseburger, large fries, and small Coke, but the Coke was maybe, let's say, not cold, or it was flat, meaning there was no fizz in it. So that's a non-working product. You gave them the product, but it was not working. That's a failure too. So if you see, the defect happens in 3 ways. So I was expecting you to give me A, you give me more than A, that's a defect. If you give me less than A, that's a defect. If you give me a non-working A, that's a defect also. So giving more, giving less, or giving me a defective product is considered as a defect. Sorry, or if you give me a non-working product, that's a defect. Okay, so there are 3 things we need to look for when you're delivering product. I hope I'm not giving more. I hope I'm not giving less. I hope I'm giving them something that is working, right? I cannot give them cheeseburger, but the cheeseburger is not properly cooked, right? Or the cheeseburger is rotten or something, right? I cannot tell the customer, you asked for cheeseburger, I gave you, but hey, this is a rotten cheeseburger. Make sense?
Yes, I have one question.
Sure.
Um, you showed now quality, about the quality. Who is the producer? Producer's first perspective. Who is the producer?
A producer are people who will make the product.
Okay. So user, who is the user? Customer?
Customer, exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
So all this I mentioned in the recording from yesterday. Try to watch the recording one more time. Looks like you may have missed out on this in the recording. So initially, if you see in the beginning, I asked the question, what is quality? Right? And yesterday, Hamid was there, not sure what happened to him today. And I asked Hamid, like, definition of quality. And, you know, he was very close. Actually, pretty much he nailed it. But he was mentioning everything from the customer perspective, like what meeting requirements, right, for customers. So he was not mentioning the producer perspective, people who build the product versus people who will use the product. So quality has 2 definitions, and the 2 definitions are based on the perspective. This is company. This could be McDonald's. When McDonald's or 7-Eleven or Starbucks or maybe Nike shoes, they are saying we are trying to meet customer requirements. And customers, when they buy, they are saying like, is it fit for my need? Okay. So that's what the definition of quality is, not quality assurance, quality only. Okay. All right, so now that we have some foundations explanation done already, let's talk about what is error or mistake. So error, mistake is same thing, okay? And what it means, a human action that produces an incorrect result. Okay, so with my interaction, an incorrect result is produced, that's an error or mistake I made. What about defect? It's the departure of quality characteristics from a specified value. Isn't that what I just explained, right? That you have requirements, which is the specified value. So if it's going away from the specified value, whoops, can you all see me? Can you all see
Yes.
my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I had a little quick glitch, I think, electrical glitch. Um, so, okay. All right. So the departure of quality characteristic from specified value. So specified value is the requirement, right? This is what customer ordered. And now tester is comparing. And when there is a departure, like, you know, something like a variance from the requirement, that's a defect. Okay. Then look at this. the last sentence is found during static testing. So what is static testing? Testing happens at two levels. I shouldn't say level, but there are two types of testing. One is static and other is dynamic. Okay, so if you look at the testing, there are two parts of it: static testing or dynamic testing. What's the meaning of static? Now, I'm very sure, Samina, you have done static testing. I have a strong feeling.
Static means that a non-moving thing. Is that what it is?
Very true. Something that is not moving is static. What about dynamic?
Something that's in motion.
Motion, yeah, opposite of static, right? Or static is opposite of dynamic. Okay, does that gives you a little bit clue on what kind of testing would that be? A dynamic testing?
Yeah, dynamic testing would be probably, you know, for example, testing a car that's running.
Very good. So in software world, what would be that then?
It would be the processor.
Basically saying run the software and
Run the
use the
software.
software
Yeah.
and see if it's working or not, right?
Right.
So you'll be like, Hussein, that's pretty much all the testing that I know of. Like, you know, you have to run the product, use the product, and then do the testing, correct?
Right.
So when do we test without turning on the software or without running on the software? What would that be, right? That's like some curiosity already coming to your head, right?
Yes, because software is.
You have to run the code to test, right?
Yes.
If you're saying like, hey, Hussein, I want you to test Excel spreadsheet. So I'll be like, okay, I have to run the code for Excel spreadsheet. And how do I run the code? I click the icon and it starts up. And that's when I go and start testing. So I can only do dynamic testing on it, correct? Review,
Right.
and you will say pretty much that applies to all the software. You have to run the software in order to test. But what about, how can I explain, don't run the software and still test it, right? And who would do this and when does that happen? Okay, before we build the product, don't we gather together and let's say look at the requirements? Let's say customer wrote some customer gave some requirements to the business analyst documents that, and now we are going through that documentation. Is the software built already? Question to the class: is the software ready yet? This is just, we just got a requirement from customer and then they said, hey, we want XYZ. And now the business analyst is having a review meeting to say, let's review the document that I just wrote to see if there is any mistakes in it or not. So my question to you all is the product ready for testing at this point?
No, it's not.
It's not. It's just paper saying that this is what customer wants. But you are still reviewing the document to find problems. Because many times customer may ask something which is not possible to make or which will contradict certain rules. Like let's say customer will say, hey, I need a kiosk in my restaurant, or maybe on the table, on the dinner table, I want iPad. So the customer, they can enter what they want through the iPad. And you now, when you're reviewing this document, you'll be like, no, that's not possible to business analysts. And let's say business analysts will say, why that's not possible? You'll be like, we don't have Wi-Fi in our store, right? And let's say this is something technical, which product owner or business analyst were not aware of it. So they'll be like, what to do now? Okay, either get Wi-Fi or tell customer this, we cannot make this product for you because we don't have Wi-Fi in the restaurant. Okay, so what happened here? Without even building the product, you guys found mistake in the requirement. And I can give you one real life example what happened to me. Customer, I was working for Sony Pictures, right? And when a movie is made, right, it goes to movie theater and whatnot, all those different levels. Then from movie theater it goes to cable, and it goes to airlines to show on the plane, and then once from cable, it comes like a paid pay-per-view or something like that, right? And once that duration is passed, then it goes to all these different channels, right? Like ABC, NBC, things like that. And because there are so many channels like Disney or ABC Sports, ABC, Universal, NBC, UPN, customer said, because the list is very long, right? And we don't want customer keep typing like this is what they want. What we would like to do is once they type the third character, show them a matching list with those three characters. So generate the list once they enter the third character. When I saw that requirement, I said, hey, we shouldn't be doing this. And they were like, why? I said, there are two channels that I know of that only takes two characters, which is E true. One is E true, which is E with the exclamation sign. And the other channel is FX. I said, these two channels require two characters. So what will happen is customer will type in two characters thinking they will see the list. The list will never show because the software is waiting for you customer to say enter the third one and I'll show you the list. And the customer will think like, oh, maybe we don't support these channels, right? It would create a big problem. So it was caught even before the product was built. This is an example of static testing. Without running the software, you find problems. Usually examples are review, walkthroughs. It could be code review also. Many times when the code is written, somebody will sit down and read the code to make sure your code is written up to the standards. And if it's not, they submit a defect. So that's, again, without running the code, you're finding mistakes. So this is again another example of static testing. Okay, so a product when it comes out for testing or built, there is a static testing done, there is a dynamic testing done on the product. But first round it goes through the static, and once the product is built, then we do dynamic. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So if you find there are differences in requirements and the product during static testing, that's a defect.
Okay.
So let's say you don't catch the defect during static testing, and now when you run the product and the defect manifests during the execution of the software, and then you find the problem, it is called fault. Okay, so that's the difference. Defect is found variance from requirement during static testing, and fault is when you see that bug, its manifestation, that now the bug is happening in the product because why? You're running it, you're executing it. So that is called fault. What about bug? Bug is an informal way to say that you have found fault. Okay, so why use the word bug? Oh, we lost Sangeeta. What happened to Sangeeta? I'm trying to reach Sangeeta because she lost connection.
Yeah, no problem.
Can you tell Sangeeta to click the link again? Somehow we lost her. Yeah, there was a power outage for a few minutes. I saw that little glitch on my side also, and a quick glitch happened. Yeah. Oh, so it was okay for you, right? Yeah, for me it's okay. I confirmed with another student online. I see her now. Admit. Yep, she's in the class now. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Hi, Sangeeta. You back? Can you
Yes.
hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear
So
you.
your side also had a power glitch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I also saw that, but luckily it was so fast. I didn't lose the session.
Yeah. Just a few seconds where went off.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, maybe because I have installed UPC, basically a battery backup for my internet.
Oh, that's
So during that glitch, I don't see any problem with the internet. Oh, okay. So please watch the recording. I went through explaining defect, error, defect, and fault. I'm not sure. And also I went through static testing and dynamic testing.
okay.
Let's talk about bug. Why defect or fault, sometimes called bug? Do you all have any idea why it is called bug?
No, we've just randomly heard the term bug.
Right. And you must have heard about um, viruses, and these are not like real virus or like the bug as a bug, right?
Yes.
It's a software terminology bug. I heard many times, but
Yeah.
I have no idea.
And here's the story behind it. Actually, it was a real bug.
Wow.
Oh,
And actually, her name is very popular, Grace Hopper, a lady who first found this problem, and she coined the word bug. See, in olden days, which I'm talking about 1945, right, around that time frame, the computers were not made from transistors or ICs or chips, right? It was not like solid state device. It was more like an electromagnetic devices. Okay, electromagnetic device basically, I don't know if you all remember from your maybe fifth grade, sixth grade, I don't know, maybe fourth grade. You take a piece of wire and wrap it around a metal piece, and then you pass voltage to it. That metal piece becomes magnet. Do you all remember that part from your school days?
Yes.
Right. So when that thing becomes magnet, it would pull a switch. Okay, so that's how switching was done in the computer. So it was basically electromechanical because you pass electric voltage and it converts into a mechanical switch to turn on the switch or turn off the switch. Because once the metal becomes magnet, it would pull the switch. And when you don't pass the voltage, it is not a magnet, it's back to plain metal, then it would release the switch because now it's not pulling the switch anymore. So that's how they were playing around with switches to build a computer. So between the contacts of the switch, a moth got stuck and died, and the switch couldn't make the contact. Right? I don't know if you have the experience of when you're washing your clothes next to your washing machine. When the washing machine starts, you will hear some clicks, like a really loud click, very noticeable click. I don't want to say loud, but noticeable click, and then you'll see this motor start spinning. Then maybe another click, and you hear the water gushing into the machine. Have you noticed that? There are some clicks before something happens on
Yes.
the
Yes.
washing machine. Those are actually still electromechanical switches they are using. It is called relays. So the computer board on your washing machine decides, okay, now it's time to turn on the water. So it sends voltage to the relay, and the relay is like a switch, and you hear that click because there is a movement in there. It's turning off to on. Think like someone is going in your room and turning on the light switch, but this operation is happening by passing the voltage and making a magnet temporarily. So when it becomes magnet, it turns on the switch. Or it could be opposite also. When it magnets, it turns off the switch. Okay, so these switch in those days were not sealed switch, and some insect came in, and that's how they started giving the term bug. Okay, now when do you call? So keep in mind, in real world, we don't differentiate like this is an error or this is a bug or this is a fault. We just use the word defect throughout, right? Or we will use the word bug, and we'll play around with this. Either you'll say, hey, I found a bug, or you'll say, hey, I found a defect. You will never say, hey, I found an error. Even if you say error, they will assume you mean defect. So in real testing world or in IT world, everything is defect or a bug. Even if you say it's a mistake, it's a fault, or it's a failure, they all think, okay, that's a bug or a defect. So the only two words you will hear in IT is bug or a defect. Okay. And now this could become an interview question, and they may say, what's the difference between bug and a defect? So for you, it will be like, hey, I remember Hussein said this is just an informal way to say bug, right? A bug is an informal word to say defect, because when you're with your friends and coworkers, within the company, you can use the word bug because it's an informal word. But when you're talking to the customer, you use the word defect to be more formal. Or when you're writing some documentation, formal documentation, you will use the word defect instead of bug. Okay, and the reason you're doing that, it's more business appropriate. But what happened because of this nature of this terminology, people started to assume when customer finds the problem in the product, it is a defect. But if we find before customer, it's a bug. No, that's not the reason. The reason is it's informal, and we don't want to be informal with the customer, right? So that's the reason behind it. It's informal versus formal, not who found it. Okay, so please bear that in your back of your head, the right definition, and I'll tell you how to handle it in the interview, things like that. Okay, so with that, let's stop at this point. I'm keeping the session a little small today because it takes around 15 minutes for today's recording to become a video, and I cannot start my next session until this video is ready. Do you all have any questions? So inshallah, in our next session, we will go over failure. Okay. And we'll do some examples also to, exactly explain using a code which is a defect, which is a failure, things like that.
Okay.
Question, I hope I can answer.
No questions at this point. Thank you so much for today's session.
You're welcome. And
Okay.
everything is clear for now?
So error, mistake, defect, bug, everything is a same word, but we use the different way.
No. They are different words, but we use it the same way in the industry.
Okay.
But when you'll sit in exam, please make sure these, follow the slide. Otherwise, you will fail your exam.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Good, Sangeeta. Good questions. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
We'll
you.
meet
Thank you.
next week, Saturday at 8:30 a.m.
All right. Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.